councillors, officers, visitors we have with us in the gallery this evening, and welcome back to our Wonderful Standard reporters. It's great to have you in the room. Welcome to the February Council meeting of Corangamite Shire, and to those who may be watching at home. I'll start the meeting with the prayer. We ask for guidance and blessing on this council. May the true needs and well-being of our communities be our concern. Help us who serve as leaders to remember that all our decisions are made in the best interests of the people, culture and the environment of the Corangamite Shire. Amen. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land around Corangamite Shire, the Eastern Maar and Wadawurrung people. We pay our respects to all Aboriginal elders and peoples past, present and emerging. I'd just like to take this opportunity to introduce our councillors and our senior officers that are joining us this evening. I'm the Mayor, Ruth Gistrain, and to my left is Deputy Mayor Geraldine Canady, Councillor Joe Beard, Councillor Jamie Vogels, and to my right is Councillor Kate Macon, Councillor Laurie Hickey and Councillor Nick Cole. Our CEO, Andrew Mason. Our directors, Ms. Brooke Love, Director of Works and Services, Ms. Justine Linley, Director of Sustainable Development, Mr. David Ray, Director of Corporate and Community Services, Mr. Aaron Moyne, Manager of Planning and Building Services, and Mr. James Plozza, Governance Executive Assistant. Thank you. That's a new title for the channel. We have no apologies, Mr. CEO. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest?
Madam Mayor, I've received no declaration.
Thank you. Councillors, confirmation of minutes is recommendation that the minutes held on the 25th of January 2022 be confirmed. Someone like to move those minutes? Thank you, Councillor Canady, and seconded Councillor Cole. If there's no questions or comments on the minutes, I'll put it to a vote. All in favour? Carried. We have a deputation to Council relating to item 8.1. Mr. Eric Webb. Mr. Webb, if you'd like to come to the lectern and we'll hear your deputation.
Yeah, I've been at where I am, and you've been there for 8 years with my dogs. I've been breeding all my life with my family, by myself, but 20 years with the Bulldogs. In 2003, I was injured. I got post-traumatic stress disorder, and that's been my life ever since. I love my dogs, I love what I do. Yeah, it's been a difficult process. This is a planning permit application. It was unknown to me before I bought that property. I was looking for a new place and looked around and found that one, and yes, it suited everything, and instantly the same plans that I've got today is what I saw for that place when I first saw it. And before I moved in, I rang the council. I didn't just move in with all the dogs unannounced. I rang the council, I rang the bylaws department, and I asked, could I buy that property and could I have my excess animal permit, could I have my DAB permit, which I had in the previous place where I was living. And yeah, it took about a week, and I was very anxious because the house is for sale, and eventually got back to me and said yes, that's okay. So I purchased the property and moved there. Totally unaware of the law that is in the planning department. The bylaws and the code of practice for the operation of a breeding establishment, they're all laws that we all know. This law is in the planning department, and it's a little tiny little law that says if you have an excess dog permit, you need to get a planning permit. So basically, if you live in town and you've got 2 little dogs and that's the limit there, and you'd like an extra one, that's the way the law reads, that you need to have a planning permit for that. So I wasn't notified of that for about the first 5 years, and as soon as I was, I went to council and began the process. They say that there's ongoing non-compliance. Well, this is the only thing that I can think of that hasn't got me up to compliance. Every other aspect is. I've noticed, I got the officer's report at 5 o'clock yesterday, so it wasn't much time to digest it, but I read it instantly. I noticed that there's been a lot of other arbitrary things put in there as recommendations. Things like, I can't take one of my dogs on a leash and walk them off my property. I sort of don't see, why those sorts of things are put on me, If I took my dogs for a kilometre walk where I live, I'd go past one person's house, and that person's a friend of mine. And, it's not something that I've ever done. I don't believe in it, but it's just all these extra all these extra things that are put on. There's a couple that are very big. So I'll get to those two, and that'll be all. One is that in that Melanie recommends that I have no more than 6 fertile females. Now that language, in amongst all the laws of the dog breeding, it is what it is, right? The government, councils, they consider a 3-month-old dog to be a fertile female dog. Okay, and I can't breed with that dog till 15 months, sometimes 21, sometimes 2 years. So that little dog is not something that I'm going to be breeding with, and to put a limit of 6 fertile females on me, I could at any stage have 3 puppies, have 3 adults. I've put it clearly in my planning permit. Please don't read the first one. That was really bad, right? But the second one is what it was supposed to be in the beginning, and that's everything, word for word, everything perfect. And so there's laws with the dogs, and it seems like extra ones are being put on to me. Everyone in Victoria, if they're a member of a particular organisation, there's a few different categories of people. If they're a member of applicable organisation, and and less than 10 fertile females, all right, they don't have to get the DAB, right? I want to get the DAB. My plan, I think, is perfect. Melanie's put a lot of concerns in there that she doesn't know about this or that or that, but there are mistakes in her understanding of what it is. Like she said, there's no pen designed for the inside of the kennels. Well, if you read the DAB laws, it says that you're allowed to home 5 dogs over 16 weeks together. So the size of the kennels are 4x7. That is enough for 4 dogs in that kennel. The second one's the same size, so that's another 4 dogs. The other one's a little bit bigger. The extension part is a little bit bigger. That is 5.15 by 7. So that's 36 square metres. That's enough for 5 dogs. 4 plus 4 plus 5 equals 13. That's what I've dropped the thing to. It's very sad for me to drop the thing, because I've never sold a dog that I've owned for breeding after I finished. I've kept them for their entire life. And, going down to 13 it's kind of going to mean that I'll have to do that sometimes.
Just one more minute, please, Mr. Webb.
Pardon?
Just one more minute.
Yes, okay. So with the number of fertile females, right, I would like the flexibility to put 6 and then to have a number of those as puppies. I've put it in the planning permit that bulldogs are hard to get pregnant, so you miss 50% of the things. It could mean that I would have 1 litter in a year, because just that way that it works out. I don't want 10 breeding, I call them breeding females, that older age. I don't want 10 of those. That's ridiculous and impossible, and it would kill somebody to do it. But to have that particular wording in there and to limit to 6, I think there is sort of like common law. You know, everyone else has the laws, the state government law. It's there. It says what it says, and now, you know, extra is being put onto me. The other thing was she wanted a colour-bond fence across the front of mine and between me and my one neighbour to the south. She wanted a fence that's 1.2 metres high, and she wanted something that the dogs can't see through. You've been to my house, you know the thick vegetation at the front. This was addressed 5 years ago. Rangers came out and said, we want you to put another fence to keep the dogs away from the front fence. I installed that fence. I said $10,000, but thinking about it in the last little bit, it's much more. That's already been done. She wants it 1.2 metres high. I went up with a tape measure, it's 1.1 metres high. They don't jump it now. The extra 10 centimetres won't make a difference. When she told me on the phone on Friday, I thought, great, you know, whatever. I'll just lift it up. I thought it might be 20 centimetres, but it's 10. I'll do something with that. Now I hear that it's got to be solid and you can't see through it. I priced it up. It's about 70 metres at the front, 120 metres at the side. That's roughly 200 metres, $100 a metre, and that's priced. Colour bond fencing, 1.2 metres high. That's going to be about $20,000. I've designed fences further back, right? So there's great protection. They don't get to the front fence. You've been to the front of my house. You know there's huge nature strips, huge roadways. There's barely any people walking down there. I put that down and said, you know, one person a month might walk past. There's nowhere to go out there. But thank you for my 6 minutes, 7 minutes.
Thank you. 9.5 actually, but we won't go over that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Webb. Councillors, now move on to the agenda to planning reports. Item 8.1, planning permit application PP 2021-007, the use and development of land for domestic animal husbandry, dog breeding, at 22 Pett Street, Skipton. So I'd ask Mr. Moyne to introduce this item, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you I present Council with this report for planning permit application PP 2021-007. This application was previously included on the agenda of the 23rd of November 2021 Council meeting, where it was recommended that the Council issue a notice of refusal to grant a permit. The applicant requested to amend the application and the item was withdrawn to enable further assessment and review. The amended application seeks approval to keep up to 13 British and Australian bulldogs at the property, including 6 breeding females. Puppies are excluded from the total number of animals. The number and size of litters will vary, but each fertile female can have up to 1 litter per year of between 1 to 8 puppies. The dwelling and existing shed of the applicant will be used for the dog breeding and keeping. The use and development will include extension and conversion of the existing shed into kennels, puppy nursery within the dwelling, a bathing and hydro facility, a septic tank to capture waste to be pumped out off-site, and an external and internal fencing. Notice of the amended application has been provided to objectors, and 8 objections remain for the application, which raise issues including site management, amenity impacts, including noise and smells, environmental impacts, and public safety. Assessment of the application has been complicated by the applicant carrying out the use for several years without the required planning approval in place. Assessment of the application has been undertaken and concludes that the use and development for dog breeding is appropriate and both amenity and environmental impacts to adjoining rural residential properties can be managed. Permit conditions have been drafted which aim to ensure that the use for dog breeding is controlled and managed at an acceptable level. The applicant has a legal responsibility to comply with any permit conditions and management plans should a permit be granted. Any failure to comply with the permit will result in further compliance and enforcement activity. The recommendation is provided before you.
Thank you, Mr Moyne. Councillors, there's an officer's recommendation. Page 16, someone like to move that motion?
I'd like to move an
Councillor
alternative
Vogels.
motion, Madam Mayor.
What's your motion, Councillor Vogels?
That we notice to refuse to grant a permit. The recommendation, the council, having caused notice of planning permit number PP 2021/007 to be given under section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act, and having considered all matters required under section 60 of the Planning Environment Act 1987, decides to issue a notice of decision to refuse to grant the permit under provisions of the Corangamite planning scheme in respect of the land known and described as Crown Allotment 1, Section 1A, Township of Skipton, Parish of Skipton, 22 Pett Street, Skipton, for use and development of land for domestic animal husbandry, dog breeding, based on the following grounds. The use and development does not provide an acceptable outcome or net community benefit in terms of the planning policy framework. Number 2, the use and development does not provide an acceptable response to the farming zone. Number 3, the use and development will result in an unreasonable level of amenity impact and land use conflict with adjoining properties. Number 4, the use and development fails to provide a satisfactory response to the requirements of the Code of Practice for the operation of breeding and rearing businesses 2014, revised June 2018, Animal Welfare Victoria. Number 5, the use and development does not result in the proper and orderly planning of the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vogels. Councillor, is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Canady. Councillor Vogels, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
I'd just go over again what was in the recommendation, Madam Mayor. The use and development does not provide acceptable outcome or net community benefit, and it does not provide an acceptable response to the farming zone, and does not result in the proper and orderly planning of the area, and probably most importantly, impact and land use conflict with adjoining properties. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Canady, do you want to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Our planning and local laws officers have consulted with the applicant for many hours over a very extended period of time in an effort to achieve compliance with the Planning and Environment Act 1987 and the Domestic Animals Act of 1994. The applicant has been conducting his breeding activities for the past 8 years without a permit. The current application as it stands does not accord with the Code of Practice for the operation of breeding and rearing businesses 2014, and the applicant is relying on membership of the Master Dog Breeders Association to exempt him from that Code of Practice.
I'm not obliged to follow that practice.
And to satisfy the recreational breeders classification. The outcome of this application really does need to be positive for the community. There has been ongoing compliance issues, and as I read the applicant's responses to the objectors, there was a very clear attitude of disrespect evident in the style of the applicant's responses, which caused me to have very low confidence in the willingness of the applicant to adhere to any permit conditions if there were a permit granted. So I really feel that this application is not going to be a good outcome in this area, particularly as it has developed into an area where there are quite a lot of rural lifestyle properties. So I support the alternate recommendation as put forward by Councillor Vogels.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillors, is there further comments? Councillor Hickey.
Thanks, Mayor. And look, I've got absolutely no doubt that Mr Webb loves his bulldogs. When I saw them, there was evidence that he really cared deeply for them. My concern revolves around the way that we can keep 13 dogs in a small confined area like that and still have some net community benefits. I'm concerned that the planning permit has taken a long time to get to this stage, some 5 years I understand, and I'm not confident, pardon me, I'm not confident that the conditions would be met. So for that reason I'm supporting Councillor Vogel's amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillors, Councillor Beard.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I've just got a query, and apologies that it's without notice of Mr Moyne, just around the code of practice. Just trying to wrap my head around it. This is a really complex application, and yes, we've seen it ourselves, and I'm still trying to get my head around what's in front of us. And yeah, I was just trying to get some more guidance from you around the code of practice.
Yep.
Mr Moyne, can you answer the question about how the code of practice works in this planning permit?
Thank you, Councillor Beard, for your question, and through you, Madam Mayor. The code of practice is in place and would typically apply to dog breeding facilities where an operator isn't a member of a registered organisation. Late last year, Mr Webb applied through the Master Dog Breeders Association, I believe. I might not have had that term exactly correct, for registration, and has become a member of that organisation. And technically speaking, that organisation is responsible for overseeing his compliance under the Domestic Animals Act in relation to his breeding activities. So technically speaking, he doesn't need to meet and comply with the code of practice per se as part of his application, given that he is a member of the organisation. However, it is still relevant in Council's decision making to consider as part of the application, given that it's a code of practice established by state government, and that's referred to in the Act as a decision making criteria for Council. So if his membership were to fall through as it stands with the organisation that he's a member of, then he wouldn't be compliant following our review of the code of practice, and that would have influenced our recommendation tonight.
Thank you, Mr Moyne. Councillors, is there any further comment at this stage? No? Before I put to the vote, I will say that unfortunately I can't support Councillor Vogel's on alternate motion. I think that this process has been through thorough vetting, as Mr Moyne has outlined, that the applicant is now a member of the Master Dog Breeders Association and needs to comply with the rules. I have a concern, as councillors do, about whether or not Mr Webb does comply with the rules, but I feel that if we've got a planning permit in place, we do have enforcement avenues to go down if the conditions that were set were not adhered to. So I think that, in my mind, this adds another string to our bow if we need to take those measures going forward. I think that just by guessing that Mr Webb isn't going to comply is probably just some speculation. You don't know that that's not going to be the case, and so I'm putting my faith in the planning officer's recommendation on this occasion. But I am happy if no one has anything else. Oh, sorry, Councillor Vogels, would you like to have a right of reply before we put it to a vote?
I just wondered if I could suspend the procedural motion to suspend standing orders. Can I have a seconder?
I'll ask for a seconder. Is there a seconder to suspend standing orders? Councillor Beard, all those in favour? That motion is carried. Okay, so...
Councillors outside?
yes, perhaps we can go out the back door. Councillors would like to go out. We'll suspend standing orders for a couple of minutes. Thank you, councillors. Can I have a motion to resume standing orders, please? Councillor Vogels, do I have a seconder? Councillor Canady, all in favour? That motion is carried. So we're at the situation right now where we have a motion for refusal of this permit moved by Councillor Vogels, seconded by Councillor Canady. Councillors, are you ready for me to put this motion to a vote?
Sorry,
Councillor
through you,
Beard.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to foreshadow another recommendation or an alternative motion, to defer this vote to gain further knowledge on this particular planning application.
So you want to defer this motion?
And apologies, this isn't normal practice.
No, it's not. Does someone second the motion to defer this item for, are you happy to make it 1 month? I think that's only reasonable for the applicant.
It's definitely only needs to be 1 month.
1 month.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillor Beard, do you want to clarify why you've moved that motion?
I think it's important that we clarify the recommendation that was proposed. The alternate motion, sorry, I'm trying to figure out which way I'm meant to be going, that Councillor Vogels provided to us here before, and also there's some queries also in relation to the planning application with the report to us tonight.
Okay, just before I put that one to the vote, I just want to clarify with, or make sure Councillor Vogels, Councillor Canady are both happy to lay this on the table for a month.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Good, thank you. Is there any further discussion, councillors, on this? Is everyone clear what we're voting on? This is to defer a decision on this item for 1 month. Okay, all those in favour? It's carried. So Mr. Webb will be dealing with this at next month's council meeting. Thank you. Item 8.2 is Victoria's Big Housing Build, proposed residential development at 80 Camperdown, Cobden Road, Camperdown. The council submission, Mr. Moyne, I'd like to speak to this item, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you again, I present council with this report and a draft submission regarding a proposed residential development at 80 Camperdown, Cobden Road, Camperdown, also along Fenton Street, funded through the Victorian Big Housing Build. This is the second development proposal submitted for the land after an initial development concept for 26 proposed dwellings was withdrawn before it went to council for consideration due to concerns raised by council and community members surrounding development design, density and neighbourhood character. This amended proposal now reduces the development in half by looking to develop 13 dwellings, including 2 3-bedroom dwellings and 11 2-bedroom dwellings, each with 2 car parking spaces and internal 2-way access within the site from Fenton Street. The plans have been reviewed against the objectives and design standards for the big housing build, whilst considering local neighbourhood character, residential amenity and the physical context and location of the site. The proposal provides for an improved design outcome which will facilitate residential development within Camperdown and is in line with Council's strategic focus for new housing of appropriate design. The recommendation is provided before you.
Thank you, Mr. Moyne. Councillors, there's a recommendation that the CEO make a submission on this. Councillor Beard, do I have a seconder? Councillor Macon. Councillor Beard.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, and first I'd like to thank the residents and loan owners, I should say, in Camperdown for taking the opportunity to have their say and the fact that councillors have taken on board what the community's feedback was. I know Councillor Hickey and Councillor Castrain are certainly living here in Camperdown where we're facilitating a lot of those discussions, so thanks for that feedback. It's very important that we are part of this process, and I think from the original plans that we had seen for the proposed development, it's certainly come a long way in a positive way by addressing those concerns that people within the community had, particularly around the density of the buildings and the landscapes and everything. It was just very high density. So at least these latest lot of plans we've seen is certainly almost twofold in a better way. So, but I'm glad that we can have a submission that I think fully supports what we've been hearing from the community, but also addressing the concerns that we as a council have had as well. Certainly acknowledging that any housing development in our communities is going to be a good thing, but we also need to be mindful of that there's a lot of people out there that need this type of housing, and that we've got caring communities that can help facilitate that growth. So I, for one, am certainly supportive of a submission being written by the CEO, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillor Macon.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. The original proposal for 26 dwellings presented issues which have now been largely addressed through the redesign of the development and the reduction in the number of dwellings to 13. The subject site is located in an established residential area, primarily consisting of single dwellings on mixed-sized lots, and most dwellings are single stories and can contain outbuildings and associated landscaping offering low density residential character. And this amended proposal to reduce the density of the development of LA13 is over a greater area and complemented with a suitable landscape design provides a much better design response to the existing residential character. More car parking has been made available, and this is a positive considering there is limited public transport within the Shire. Also, having connecting new footpaths with the current network means the residents of this facility will have better access to the town centre. I'm very thankful that the applicant has listened to the feedback it received when it met with the community and the council, as we now have a very good design that fits with the surrounds and addresses the previous concerns that were brought up. This also shows that working together and having community consultations is very important in helping getting the right design and character for the area.
Thank you, Councillor Macon. Councillors, is there any further comments? Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I think this is it's a good outcome. The initial proposal of 26 houses on that site didn't raise my eyes when I first heard about it, and by listening to the residents, I think that was quite evident that it was probably not in character with the town's development. Whilst we were welcoming new houses, that was probably far too intense and probably something better suited to in an urban development. So I think this is a very, very good outcome and a good compromise by the developers.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Is there anything further, councillors? Can I just mention the work of John Maher and Stephen Hill, two local residents who really took up the concerns of their neighbours and putting together a very good submission, as well as instigating a petition about the original proposal. And I'd also like to acknowledge local member for Polwarth, Richard Reardon, who took the petition and tabled it in Parliament, and I'm sure that that perhaps carried some weight as well, and he certainly was very supportive of the local community. So I think, as councillors have said, we've got a much better outcome, I think, while supporting people, as Councillor Beard mentioned, who need social housing. Councillors, we'll put that to a vote. All in favour? Carried. Move on now to officers' reports. Item 9.1 is the finance report December 2021. Mr. Ray, can you introduce this, please?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, councillors, the report notes the current financial position as at the 31st of December 2021 and seeks approval to amendments to the current year budget. And these amendments has resulted from a mid-year review of operations. Council's financial performance for the financial year at the end of December is on target, with a small year-to-date unfavourable cash variance of around $157,000 compared to budget. The main contributors to that variance have been detailed in the report. The report's also seeking approval of budget changes of around $985,000. A significant component of these, or of this change, relates to higher than budgeted costs associated with a number of capital works, and that's largely attributed to the availability of contractors, but also the cost increases currently being experienced across the construction sector. And again, there's further detail provided in the report on those variations. Mayor, it's recommended that Council receives a financial report and approves adjustments to the current year reviewed budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Councillors, is there any questions, or is someone prepared to move that recommendation? Canady, do I have a seconder? Councillor Cole. Councillor Canady.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As usual, Mr. Ray always explains our budget position very clearly. and the documents he provides are very detailed, and we can see where the variations in the expenditure and income have occurred, and like so many businesses at the moment, we're experiencing increased costs and difficulty with staffing and receiving product and all of those sorts of things, and it all affects the way your proposed budget unfolds. So we certainly have had some differences in the timing of expenditure and grant receipts. So look, these are the variations that do occur when you're managing a large budget. So I have no difficulty with accepting the recommendation here. That's just how things play out. We do have a high level of capital projects in our system, and I think the council staff are doing an amazing job managing that, and all the issues that are around all that at the minute. But I think the important thing is that we can see that our cash position for year end of 22 will remain in the target of $5 million or greater. So, we're still on track, so that's a good thing.
Thank you, Councillor Canady. Councillor Cole, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not a lot to add, but just saying I think we're $157,000 down from where we budgeted on being, is in this climate is a pretty good way of being. I think a lot of businesses would be very happy to be in that position at the moment. It's been a tough couple of months with things skyrocketing, prices skyrocketing, and costs going higher, and getting people to do jobs, and etc. It's a pretty good outcome, and if we can live within that, we're still not in deficit. So hopefully we can pick some of it up somewhere else and keep back to where we hope to be. So I have no trouble with it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cole. Councillors, anything further? All in favour? Carried. Item 9.2 is sexual harassment prevention and reporting policy. This is a new policy to council, and I'll ask Mr. Ray to introduce it, please.
Thanks, Mayor, and through you, as you have introduced, the policy is new, and it's recommended that Council adopts the sexual harassment prevention and reporting policy. The policy follows a range of recommendations made by the Victorian Auditor General's review and subsequent report into the prevalence of sexual harassment in local government. The recommendations made in the Auditor General's report have informed the policy's development. Workplace sexual harassment is a serious matter, and the policy's adoption will underpin Council's commitment to providing a safe environment free from all forms of harassment and victimisation. The policy also seeks to inform councillors and those who work for Council about what constitutes workplace sexual harassment and victimisation. And additionally, the policy provides guidance how to report such matters and information about support services. Mayor, it's recommended that Council adopts a policy dated February 2022 as attached to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Councillors, is there someone who moves the recommendation? Councillor Hickey. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Beard. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. This policy reads very, very well. But one part I'd just like to make mention of in speaking to the motion is that what is sexual harassment? And sexual harassment is the unwelcome conduct of sexual nature towards a person which could be reasonably expected to make that person feel offended, humiliated or intimidated. Sexual harassment can be incurred at any particular level of the organisation. It may involve councillors, co-workers, volunteers, supervisors, managers, clients, service providers, customers. So the scope is wide. So it relies, the sexual behaviour relies on every council, on every manager, making sure that employees understand what their responsibilities are and understand that there is a very, very good position that someone who feels intimidated can go forward and promptly report such serious offences. So this policy reads particularly well, and I urge the councillors to support this new policy.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillor Beard.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Look, local government isn't immune to this type of issue, like no other, just like every other industry that we have across the worldwide, I would suspect nowadays. But I think it's important that we are known as an employer of choice, not just because of the type of work that goes on and the fabulous organisation is to work in, but also that we have staff members' backs, not only staff but also as councillors. This policy is really important. It has been identified that this is an issue. So as an employer within an organisation, we need to address that, and having these policies in place once again just cements our commitment to making sure that people don't have to deal with this sort of behaviour, and if there is that sort of behaviour, then there's the way in which that needs to be dealt with and the consequences. So I'm a firm believer in that policies are important. I know we can overdo them sometimes and we seem to have a policy for everything, but this is something that in life is happening, and we are, as I said, we're not immune, unlike anybody else, that we need to have a policy in place to protect those that need it. So I have no problem in supporting the recommendation or seconding that.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillors, is there anything further? I'll move this motion. All in favour? Carried. Item 9.3 is the Public Halls Management Policy. Ms Love.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, the Public Hall Management Policy provides a guide to the funding and management arrangements for public halls located within Corangamite Shire. The Hall Management Policy defines halls as township halls, rural halls and rural halls that are owned by council. Amendments to the policy are proposed as follows. Inclusion of Darlington as a township hall, alignment with changes to the Local Government Act, and also capturing where there is substantial equipment upgrades at the halls. The Darlington Hall is located on Crown land and is managed by a direct committee of management. This is similar to the Skipton Mechanics Institute, Lismore Community Centre and Port Campbell Community Centre. So like those centres, it's proposed to consider Darlington Hall as a township hall. This is largely on the back of, despite COVID and reduced activities over the last 2 years, the Darlington Hall attracting a number of uses within the venue, as well as high participation rates that are actually commensurate with some of the other township halls that we fund. Councillors, the inclusion of Darlington Hall will have a budget impact which we will factor into the 22-23 budget development, and the recommendation is before you.
Thank you, Ms Love. Councillors, there's a recommendation revoking the previous Public Halls Management Policy and adopting the new one. Would someone like to move that motion? I would suspect maybe even Councillor Cole would be really excited to move that motion with Darlington included. No, Councillor Macon. Councillor Cole, are you happy to second? Councillor Macon.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, Councillor Cole, I stole your thunder. Quite happy to support this recommendation. As we all know, halls are very important to the communities as they serve as a meeting place where we can get together and enjoy each other's company. We all know that halls have been under pressure the last couple of years with people not being able to do this, but it's great to see people getting back out there and enjoying these important assets that we have in our community. I'd like to thank all volunteers who help run and manage these halls. Without your support and time, these halls wouldn't look as good or run as great as they do. More than happy to add Darlington to the list of halls. As was spoken before, of recent times this hall's getting more and more use, and that's great to see. So maybe they can let it in their little secret to all the other hall committees as to why they're getting so many people involved, but more than happy to support this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Macon. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. More than happy to second this. The Darlington being the epicentre of extraordinary entertainment is well worthy of inclusion. I've thought that for a long, long time. Probably the oldest hall in the Shire, possibly. Now getting its due deserves. it is just as Councillor Macon said, it gets back to the volunteers that run these shows, and if the volunteers are doing the work and keen, a lot of things get done and makes it worthwhile. So that's what it gets back down to, a dedicated committee and keen to keep things ticking along. And even with COVID, Darwin had its struggles, but we got through it. Like a lot of other halls, it's come through and will hopefully go on bigger and better things. And without the small halls in the area, there's not a lot in some of these places. So that's, as Councillor Macon said, the community hub. So I'm more than happy to adopt this.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Anything further, councillors? All in favour? Motion's carried. Item 9.4 is the Community Initiated Projects Policy. Ms Love.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, this policy is for projects that are initiated by community groups on council-owned or controlled land, and the policy helps provide a framework for how council and the community group will tackle those projects as a collective, and the roles and responsibilities of each of the groups. The policy recognises the value of our community organisations and the work that they do to deliver projects within the communities, and we've had similar examples of projects in the past, such as rotundas, community gardens and public artworks, where this model has worked well. The policy, as I said, outlines the responsibilities for both council and the community group, and there are minimal changes, administrative changes only recommended for this policy. The recommendation is before you.
Thank you, Ms Love. Councillors, there is a recommendation revoking the previous policy and adopting the new policy. Someone like to move it, please? Councillor Canady, seconder. Councillor Hickey, Councillor Canady.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So yes, I did note Ms Love pointed out that this policy is directed at community initiatives on council-owned or controlled land. We recognise and truly appreciate the huge value of community-based organisations and the work that they do to initiate projects for the benefit of our communities. And you know, they put forward some really fabulous ideas that are very valuable, and council is more than pleased to work alongside them and support them and see worthwhile initiatives through. This policy is an important foundation document to ensure well-defined collaborative arrangements between council and the organisations, so that the projects are well considered and successfully completed. The Memorandum of Understanding forms a new part of the policy and will describe the project and define the detail of arrangements and responsibilities, including ongoing maintenance, and those elements are particularly important when any project is undertaken. So the Memorandum of Understanding is a very important component and a wise addition to the policy. So I support the recommendation, and I'm sure that there will be some wonderful projects ahead of us with some of our organisations.
Thank you, Councillor Canady. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, the council certainly recognises the contribution that communities make throughout the entire Shire, from the very ground forward. This change of policy will simply make that process a little bit more streamlined, and the council recognises that with this new Memorandum of Understanding, the aid that will be given, or the help that will be given to the community groups, will be a lot more streamlined and a bit easier to come through. So I have no trouble in recommending that we vote in favour of this policy update.
Thanks, Councillor Canady. Councillor Hickey, sorry. Is there further comments, councillors? I'll put it to a vote. All in favour? It's carried. Item 9.5 is the Playground Management Policy. Ms Love.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, similar to the previous policies, the Playground Management Policy provides the framework for management, maintenance and renewal of playgrounds within Corangamite Shire. Playgrounds, just in their natural setting, provide such benefits to our communities, not just for the physical activity for the children, but as we've seen in the past, people coming out and connecting in outdoor spaces and being able to benefit in those areas through the provision of our playgrounds. So there is minimal change recommended to our playground management approach. The proposed policy provides consistent resources to the current service levels that Council provides. So we're looking to retain the current standards, the current funding support, as well as the support for committees of other playground facilities where we provide an audit of their equipment. We're also looking to maintain a capital renewal program of approximately 14 years, which is consistent with industry best practice, as well as addressing our own Shire needs. And through the provision of these play opportunities, we should be able to continue to create those shared and accessible spaces for our communities. Councillors, the recommendation is to revoke the previous playground management policy dated February 2019 and adopt the new version. Recommendation is before you.
Thank you, Ms Love. Councillors, someone prepared to move the recommendation? Councillor Macon. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Beard. Councillor Macon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When you look at the list of playgrounds that the Shire has, it's quite an extensive list. And we all know playgrounds are a very important part of the community. They offer a meeting place and a place for physical and mental health. They are sometimes the hub of the town, where naturally most of the town's activities either start or finish. The quality of local parks can influence physical activity levels, with newly refurbished parks attracting 4 times the amount of users, and having a positive effect on leisure time and levels of physical activities of members of our community. And I also know personally it's a great meeting place for meeting friends and families for birthdays, park run and everything else, or just have a general coffee and a chat. So it's important that we keep these infrastructures in a good condition so they can be enjoyed for many years to come. So I'm more than happy to support this policy. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Macon. Councillor Beard.
Yes, thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, and certainly agree with everything that Councillor Macon has just said before. I think it's important to note that within the report it says about the renewal of playgrounds, because obviously we've upgraded, I should say, over the past 14 years, that there's been a lot of replacements and upgrades and some pretty amazing playgrounds being put in our communities. So this is about renewing, and we know that funding is going to get tougher. We rely on the state governments for so many financial assistance when it comes to doing some of our community work, and I think we need to be prepared, or our communities need to be prepared that that level of work that has occurred in the past may not be so much in the future, but we'll do our absolute best to keep them as best as they can be. Our asset renewal program and asset maintenance policy is pretty incredible, and the lengths that we go to make sure that everything is the way it needs to be and it's safe and fit for purpose. But to have the schedule of works for renewal is a really important piece of strategic work when we come to budget time. So I can certainly appreciate this policy and know how important it is, and I, like Councillor Macon, absolutely love our playgrounds and know what they bring to our communities. So it is an important policy to have. So thank you to the staff for bringing that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillors, any further comments? To a vote, all in favour? It's carried. Item 9.6 is the flying of flags policy, and I'll ask Ms Lindley to introduce this item, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this item is to provide a review and recommendation on changes to Council's flying flags policy. Council currently flies the Australian flag, the Aboriginal flag and the Corangamite Shire flag at the front of the civic offices in Camperdown in accordance with Australian national flag protocols. In addition, Council does receive requests for other community flags to be flown at the Civic Centre, often to mark days of significance, to support community campaigns or international days of note. It is proposed that to accommodate these very frequent requests for the flying of community flags, that a new community flagpole be installed near but not next to the 3 permanent flags. The proposed location of the community flagpole is in the garden bed on the east side of the Camperdown Courthouse, not on the front fronting Manifold Street. Adjustments are also proposed to the Flying the Flags policy to provide guidance as to how the community can apply for permission to use a new flagpole and what types of flags are acceptable. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Ms Lingley. I might like to say that this review's come about as a request from a member of our community, and I'm delighted to say that this is where we've got to. So it's not about one community flag on one specific day. It's now it goes through will be a community flagpole for our community to use. So I'll ask councillors to move the recommendation, revoking the existing policy and adopting the new one. Councillor Beard, seconding Councillor Hickey. Councillor Beard.
I was waiting very hastily then, but no, look, I think it's important to note, through you, Madam Mayor, I'm very happy to move this recommendation. I think it's important that we acknowledge the community expectation on what council does can change, and obviously that's hence why we've got this policy change. But there is a policy for flying flags that I don't think a lot of people knew even existed, that we just can't go and put flags up whenever we would like to or whenever the community would like to. There's actually policy around even the order in which flags are flown. So this has always been reflected in this policy, but it also now enables us to have that extra community flagpole, which I think is a good compromise for all the requests that we've been having over. And as I said, it's only expectation from the community has certainly changed as more days of community reflection has come about over recent years. So I think this is a good compromise for council to listen to the community and respect the varying requests, and as there is, and it is, as you said, it's for all of our communities, but at least it'll be in the vicinity of our existing flags, which will still continue to fly as per normal.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillor Hickey.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I must admit I was a bit astounded when I realised that there was a policy about flying flags. I thought it was something that just happened, and having gone through the policy and read it, I understand why the significance of the policy is. Yes, it is very important to accommodate the community requests, and I urge anybody who is contemplating to fly the flag to read some of the conditions, not the least of which that it can be available to the flagpole can be available to a community member for 1 day and up to a maximum of 7 days. So I think this is a great solution to a problem that had arisen with the community probably that would have happened. So happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Is there anything further, councillors? All in favour? Motion's carried. Item 9.7, Contract 2022-015, supply and install Camperdown Timboon Rail Trail bridges. Ms Love.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, yes, Council, this report is to award contract for the replacement of 2 bridges on the Camperdown Timboon Rail Trail. The Rail Trail Bridge Replacement Project is being undertaken by the Rail Trail Committee with support from Corangamite Shire Council, and it looks to replace the two existing ageing pedestrian bridges and to ensure that the trail remains accessible for all users. A detailed design has been completed and a tender process to recruit a suitably qualified contractor to supply and install the bridges. The tender received 1 submission, of which the tender evaluation panel assessed the capabilities, the experience of the contractor, the previous work of the contractor, and following that review it's considered that the tendered amount provided by GR Design and Construct is within the budget, reflects benchmark and industry costs prepared by the designer, and will deliver a satisfactory outcome for the contract. So, councillors, the recommendation is to award contract 2022-015 supply and install to GR Design and Construct.
Thank you, Ms Love. It's good news it's coming on the budget. Councillors, someone like to move that recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Macon. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hickey. Councillor Macon.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. This is a great rail trail which provides a corridor for many activities such as cycling, walking, running and horse riding, and also providing historic and a natural outdoor experience for its users. So it's important that we help keep this asset in a usable state, and it's expected, with all the wear and tear, things will need to be replaced. And I'm thankful with the help of the federal government, local roads and community infrastructure program developed, the Community Management Council will be able to enter into contract with GR Designs and contract to replace Bridge 11 and 12 on the trail, meaning this jewel in our backyard will continue to bring pleasure to many more people over the years to come. So I'm more than happy to award the contract to GR Designs and construct. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Makin. Councillor Hickey?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The rail trails are very, very important right across the Shire. It gives people outside a bit of fresh air, some exercise, but they must be maintained in a safe manner. It's not detrimental to the users, to the cyclists, and to the horse riders, and to the walkers and the joggers. So by awarding this contract to GR Design, I think that their work will be done extremely well and maintain a safe community asset for all to use.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Anything further, councillors? All in favour? Motion's carried. Item 9.8 is the biannual strategic risk update, February 2022. Mr. Ray, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, the report presents the 6-monthly report on Council's strategic risk profile as required by the Local Government Act planning and reporting regulations. And whilst this report is largely administrative in nature, it does provide Council a level of assurance that the risks are being proactively managed. Mayor, since the agenda has been prepared, Council's internal auditor has been engaged to complete a review of the strategic risks in conjunction with management and the Audit and Risk Committee. And this review may see a change in the risks identified and consequently Council's risk profile, which is currently medium. Council's Audit and Risk Committee will also receive an update on strategic risks at its meeting next month. It's recommended that Council receives the report.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Councillors, someone move this recommendation to receive the report? Councillors, Councillor Cole, Councillor Hickey, I think you finished. Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Strategic risk is something we do have to take a lot of notice of and make sure that there's no risk or minimal risk to all our staff and people working within the Shire, and make sure that all risk is taken out of the equation and things function as safely and as properly as possible. So that's basically what this is all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. The 6-month report does, as Councillor Cole said, address the strategic risk framework that's in place by the Council. It's a good report, and congratulate the author, and have no hesitation in recommending that we adopt this report.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Anything further, councillors? All in favour? Carried. Item 9.9 is the Local Government Performance Indicators Report for the 6-month period ending 31st December 2021. Thank you, Mr. Ray.
Mayor, thank you. The report is provided as required under the Local Government Planning and Reporting Regulations. As you indicated, it is for the half-yearly results for the period up to 31 December 2021. These results and the comparative results for the same period are reported in the attachment to your agenda. Council's performance is not dissimilar to the same period last year. Some indicators have performed strongly and some not so well, particularly in regards to the prevailing conditions associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. And we'll continue to see some of these indicators impacted for the remainder of the year. The results are generally favourable amongst financial performance and sustainability indicators, and Council continues to meet its government requirements as reflected in the governance and management checklist. It's recommended that Council notes the half-yearly results.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Councillors, Someone prepared to move the recommendation, noting the half-yearly results? Thank you, Councillor Beard. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Macon. Councillor Beard.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd like to thank Mr Plaza, who's with us tonight, for his input into this report, and obviously Mr Ray as well. I think it's important to note that this is a financial cost implication to council. It is one of those things that we have to do, whether we want to do it or not, under the Local Government Act. And it's interesting to reflect on the fact that Corangamite Shire has always rated really highly with all of our indicators. And although we may have a bit of a decline in a couple of areas within this latest collection, it's still by any means a fantastic result. And I think our organisation needs to celebrate that. When you compare ourselves to other like shires, I mean, we're still well above with everything we do, and a lot of where we, as I said, where we have declined is, and I think Mr Ray certainly alluded to it as well, it's because of COVID. When you think about, we're off the chart with our turnaround for our planning applications and the time to turn around. We were at 28 days, which was significantly unreal when you talk about that within local government, and it may have gone out a little bit, but that's actually a good thing, because they've actually got that many planning applications, which is actually a positive thing for our shire. So it can be skewed sometimes in the way in which we look at the data, but I think for an organisation that has been going through the torment of COVID and what it's thrown at us, just like everybody else in society, I think the organisation should be really, really proud by these results. And I hope that if there are any staff out there watching the live streaming tonight, which probably they're not, they're resting up, but I'd like to congratulate the entire organisation on the way in which we're still delivering these performance indicators, because although we do get upset from time to time that it is that we do have to report and it takes up staff time and it does cost money, I guess it is one way to reflect on actually how well the organisation is still performing. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillor Macon.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I don't have much further to add. I think Councillor Beard has summed it up completely. I just wanted to thank Mr Ray for putting together this report. But yes, we should be celebrating what we've achieved as a council. It's been a great effort considering what we've gone through with COVID and everything else. But I think Councillor Beard has summed it up just perfectly. So I've not much further to add. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Macon. Councillors, anything further? All in favour? Carried. Item 9.10 is the Council Plan Performance July to December 2021. Mr Plaza, I'd like to introduce your first item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. In a similar vein to Mr Ray's report previously, Council is required to report on its performance against the Council Plan for the first 6 months of each financial year. The purpose of this report is to keep Council and the community informed of Council's progress against the action items laid out in both the Council Plan and the Annual Action Plan. As you know, at the beginning of each term, Council creates the Council Plan, which is a strategic document that lays out the goals and priorities of Council over the coming 4 years. In addition to the Council Plan, there is also an Annual Action Plan issued each financial year, which is made up of specific action items. I would say the organisation has made a good start towards satisfying both the indicated in the Council Plan and the initiatives of the 2021-2022 Annual Action Plan. As at the 31st of December 2021, the majority of the work required for both plans was completed or well underway. In regard to the 2021-2025 Council Plan, we are only in the first financial year of the plan's implementation, so the objectives outlined are still mostly in their early stages. That said, positive early progress has been made. The Council Plan listed 39 objectives, and as of 31 December 2021, 37 of those objectives were in progress, and the 2 objectives identified as yet to commence are set to commence shortly. There has also been solid progress made on the Annual Action Plan. The Annual Action Plan outlines 87 key indicators. Of those 37 are currently complete, 47 are in progress, and only 5 are yet to start. 3 were either deferred or unfunded. Councillor, the recommendation is that you note the Council Plan and Annual Action Plan progress report for July through December 2021.
Thank you, Mr Plaza. Councillors, someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Hickey, do I have a seconder? Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. This forms part of the mandatory reporting on actions throughout the Shire, and it's very interesting to know that 87 of the key actions, of the 87 key actions, is 91% of them have been completed or have been started and commenced and well underway. So that's a very good result with only a small number not yet started. So I congratulate Mr. Flosser on his presentation of this paper, and very happy to move that this recommend this be accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillor Canady.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Given the challenges we've all been facing over the past 12 months, with all the staffing challenges and the workload increases and the necessity for the agility in the workplace, what the officers have had to manage in terms of staffing and just seeing projects through to completion, even just to get them in progress. I think that we've done a really great job. I think it's a really pleasing progress in a situation where we actually have quite a heavy workload, and it reflects extremely well on the efforts and the output of the council staff, and I'm really proud of that, and I want to thank all the council staff for their terrific work ethic. So, I think this is a good result, and I'm really pleased with it. So I'm happy to support that, or rather note those results, and I think it's a pretty pleasing start.
Thanks, Councillor Canady. Councillors, no further comments. All in favour? Carried. Item 9.11 is a quick response grants allocation for February 2022. Ms Lindley, with one application.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report is to consider the February 2022 allocation of funds as part of the Quick Response Grants program. Applications for this program are considered as they are received and are assessed against criteria including alignment with the council plan, benefit to the community and eligible expenditure. The annual budget allocation for the program is $17,500. At the time of writing the report, only one application had been received from the Camperdown Clock Tower Quilters in the Central Ward. The officer's recommendation is approved.
Thank you, thank you, Ms Lindley. Sorry, give a motion or a demotion. Councillors, someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Hickey, do I have a seconder? Councillor Cole, Councillor Hickey.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, we all love a quick response grants program. It's an opportunity for people or communities to be able to access funds that are available, and $500 towards the Camperdown Quilters will make a significant difference to this organisation. And just remind everybody too that the quick response grant is available for communities. There's still some money there available, so please follow the recommendations and get your grants applications into the offices. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not much to add. It's just a very good way of accessing some funds, as I've said many times before, for a small community group to help them get a few things done and keep them going. So I can congratulate the quilters this time.
Thank you. Councillors, all those in favour? Carried. Okay, item 10 is other business. Is there any councillors wish to raise an item of other business? Councillor Vocals.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a couple of things to bring up. First up, I'll bring up the tyre issue that I raised at the last meeting in January, when I was asking for more information after had many inquiries from concerned farmers in regards to what is happening with the stewardship of tyres on farm in the future. Firstly, I'd like to thank our CEO for following this up, and I would also like to thank Ed Graham from Delft for the prompt response, which unequivocally puts this fear to bed. Ed Graham at Delft indicated that they were still looking at the survey, but it was likely the maximum number of tyres allowed for silage would be increased. And she stressed on the number of occasions that there were no plans to stop or restrict the legitimate use of hull tyres on farms. So that's a good outcome and a good response. And secondly, I'd like to move a motion. The report be prepared for Council March meeting on the Port Campbell Town Centre Revitalisation Project.
Just hold just there, Councillor Vogels, and just get a seconder for your motion. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hickey. I'd like to speak to your motion.
Right, speak the motion.
Thank you.
So I'll read this out verbatim so I'll get it right. Since the council election and over the past 18 months, I know there has been a lot of behind the scenes work on the Port Campbell Centre Revitalisation Project. I know that this followed years of consultation and planning and workshops and debate with plans approved by the previous council on August 2020. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the efforts of the community and the former council and officers in getting the project to where it is today. I would also acknowledge the huge involvement, the huge achievement of this council in having the project successfully funded by both state and federal governments, as well as our own significant financial contribution. It is a once-in-a-generation project for Port Campbell, and a lot of work has occurred to get it to this point. And because it is once-in-a-generation project with a $15.6 million price tag, we need to make sure we get it right. We also need to make sure that we continue to listen to community, as we have in the past, the people who live and work and volunteer and run businesses in Port Campbell. As we would expect, some members of the community and businesses have been asking questions about different parts of the project, from the integrated art components to the footpath, safety, parking, traffic management and roundabouts. I know that we have a website dedicated to the project, and we have been putting information to the Beacon and to the Port Campbell Progress Group and the Port Campbell Community Association, as well as others. We've also been out to tender for works and have been working hard on all the approvals requested for a project of this size. As Ward Councillor, I chair the Community and Business Reference Group for the project and have a bit of an insight into the background and the steps taken so far, but just a bit. So this is why I'm calling for a report to be prepared so that we can all have a full update for the whole council and the community before we enter into the next phase of actual construction. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vogels. Councillor Hickey, do you have anything?
No, Mayor, I have nothing to add. I just wanted to give up Councillor Vogels the opportunity to present this
Thank
motion.
you. Thanks, Councillor Hickey. Councillors, is there any questions, comments? I'll put it to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Okay, councillors, no further business from the councillor. Open forum. Mr. Meyer, is there anything we'd like to bring to council's attention, since you're the only candidate in the gallery?
Look, I'd just like to thank council for their support and assistance in the work that was undertaken for the development in Kent Street, or Camberdown Road. It was good that all the residents got behind it. We had a couple who we couldn't please, but that's always the way, you can never please everyone. But Mayor Ruth and councillors, as Ruth pointed out, Richard Reardon, and also Dale team was very supportive in getting Richard Wing involved in it, which opened the door for us to get back in there and have discussions. Stephen and I met with developers in Torquay, had a long discussion. We were very comfortable with what's now proposed. It's great that it's going to be focused for women who've been in a disadvantaged situation or live on their own, and their major focus is women within the Shire of Corangamite and the Camberdown area in particular. So I think that's a great outcome, and I think it will just be great for development for the total area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer, and that was very remiss of me to not mention Minister Tierney for her support for the project and the community as well. Councillors, I think that concludes all our business this evening. So I formally close the meeting, and I thank those at home for watching. Good evening, and thank you, councillors and staff.
domestic violence. Number 8, based on the following grounds, the use and development does not provide acceptable outcome for the community benefit in terms of the planning policy framework. Number 2, the use and development does not provide acceptable response to the farming zone. Number 3, the use and development will result in an unreasonable level.
Councillors, is there any recommendation? CEO makes submission. Councillor Beard,
I'm also wondering whether in plugging into that.
Oh, maybe.
Because remember when it met was coming over here.
Yeah, remember when the purple leaf was in with the HDMI, it was causing a problem? Last night. It was better when they were separated, and then you put power in with HDMI. Because there's no other power leads in there. No, it's not horrendous.
It's only another round.
Yeah, and it makes sense that it's text messages because it's about the length of time that a text message beeps for or vibrates for. Trust the standard to first meeting with anything to come to. Yep. Yeah. Right, so you're going out this door, aren't you? Yeah. So we may as well start packing towards the door. I was having a flashback, I was going over that side, which is where I was